Hey up, and welcome to part two of this highly personal account of the destruction of working class education in Britain. Now, I ended part one when I left school at the age of 15. Actually, not entirely accurate. I was 14 when I stopped providing employment for the teaching trade because the academic year, the school year, I should say, ended in July and my birthday is in August. So I had over a month to go before I became 15. Nevertheless, I started Bastard Work one Monday. I can remember the enthusiasm I had as I left the house for the first time, and my dad, who had to retire because of ill health, took me to the door and told me very quietly, "Don't worry, a few years of it getting grief off the foreman will soon cure you of that." Well, yeah, he was right. Nevertheless, I had money jangling in my pockets and I had a job. But that didn't stop me, it didn't stop my drive for education. You see, obviously, aside from having a job, I had a union card. Because everybody had a union card, because we weren't fucking stupid in those days. We knew the management wanted to screw us, so joining a union meant that we could give them a bit of a screwing back. It certainly meant that they had to mind their P's and Q's around us, otherwise we'd take it up with the union. And just the threat of that was enough to put a lot of their old book in abeyance. So, I had a union card. I went to my union meetings. And because I had the card and the meetings, I met people. And I discovered a voluntary organisation called the Workers' Education Association, the WEA. Now, the WEA, I'm pleased to say, still exists and still provides education in its broadest sense for working class people. However, I quickly moved on from the WEA to the extramural department at the University of Manchester. In those days, all the serious universities had an extramural department that offered unexamined courses on various quite heavyweight topics: history, politics, economics. I attended a lot of courses at the University of Manchester with their extramural department and really loved every minute of it. To my mind, it was perfect. I could go to Bastard Work to earn money, and then I could go to the university to have my mind open to all sorts of wonderful things. And I could separate the two. So I got to the stage where I'm convinced there was an audible click as I went into work, as my brain switched itself off. And then another audible click when I finished work and left the place until the next day. And often, if I was working an early shift, I would go straight from work to the university because maybe 6, 7 o'clock in the evening, my extramural class would begin. And I loved the extramural classes. First of all, because I was treated as a human being. Secondly, because my opinions were listened to with respect, weren't often agreed with, but listened to. And finally, we could all go and have a pint afterwards. So, tutor and students all went to the boozer together and sank a few, and life was good. So, from about the age of 17, I was a regular at the extramural department. I think you had to be 18 to sign up, but I just told them I was 18. I was 6 foot tall and I had a moustache, so nobody queried my age in those days. Certainly not the publicans where I went in the boozers I went in. I remember one occasion, and this is illustrative of the difference between working class people and your middle class type. Now, I was a cinema projectionist. Projectionists were reasonably well paid. I was familiar with the attitude of the management if I worked a bit of overtime and I earned more than them. Their sense of resentment that this pleb had got more money that week than them. But it didn't bother me. I ignored them. I mean, they are scum, the middle class, so to be ignored. I was a projectionist. If I don't turn up for work, the bloody cinema doesn't open. That's all there is to it. So leave the old book behind and keep your mouth shut around me. And most of them did. One fine evening, I was stood in the quadrangle at the University of Manchester, just outside the Faculty of Arts. And who should I see but a manager I knew from one of the cinemas I'd worked in. This would have been when I was about 20, maybe, or 21. So towards the very end of the 1970s. And we exchanged pleasantries, and, we both lit cigarettes and had a chat. He was there because his daughter, I think, was a student at the university. And he asked what I was doing there, and I told him that I was attending a course, and he became very, quite excitable about it. I thought he was getting tumescent, a bit worrying. And he said, "What do you plan to do with it?" That struck me as a very almost surreal comment. What do you think I'm going to do with it? Sell it to the bloke across the street? It's a course. It's about education. It's not. It improves my mind. I tried to explain this, but I could see he wasn't getting it. But here's the thing, I wasn't getting his questions either. It was mutual incomprehension. It took me a while to figure out what was going on in his mind. And that was when I realised that for your middle class type, education is utilitarian. Education leads to something. It leads to you getting a job where you can wear a suit instead of overalls. But who gives a fuck what you wear to work? What matters is the amount of money you get come Friday evening. Can you afford to go and tie one on down the pub with your mates? Those are the important issues. The job you do isn't important. It's the amount of money you get that's important. But I realised, investigating a bit more and reading around the subject, that for your type, the amount of money, whilst important, is not as important as the sense of self-worth that they have, because they have a particular job and can call themselves professional or members of the middle class. They were still wankers, mind, and I still earn more money than them, but that's the way their little minds worked. And that, sadly, eventually is one of the reasons why working class education was destroyed. I'll come back to that in part 3. Well, let me just finish off here by going above the extramural departments to, I suppose, the elite, which was the adult education state colleges. Oxford had 2. Ruskin was the larger of the 2. It took about 50 or 60 students a year for the 2-year diploma course. Plater was the smaller one, took about 30 or 40 students a year for the same diploma course. Ruskin, I think it's fair to say, was the better known. And in 1926, Ruskin had been offered full university status by the University of Oxford, with the promise that they could continue to educate working class men with the university diploma. A college considered this and said no, with thanks, because with the best will in the world, they knew that if they accepted it, then eventually middle-class types would slither in, like rats crawl through a sewer, and the ethos of the college would disappear. So they remained independent, as did Plato, but nevertheless closely affiliated to the university, which invigilated the examinations that both colleges offered. And then when Ruskin began to offer its own college diplomas, the university provided the external examiners for those exams that Ruskin students had to sit. The only difference between the university diploma and the college one, well, the college diplomas were broader. But apart from that, if you were doing the university diploma, you had to go to schools to sit the examinations. If you were doing the college diploma, you did it in college. But basically, academically, they were the same. Getting into Ruskin was not the easiest thing in the world. In fact, it was bloody difficult, as it should be. Towards the end, well, by the early 80s, we were all losing our jobs. I decided I needed somewhere to go until the madness of Thatcherism ended, ha ha ha. So I began to explore higher education. Ruskin I knew a lot about because I was a trades union activist. There were three things that a putative student at Ruskin had to do before he would even get an interview. Now, the first was that he had to demonstrate that he had sought to educate himself. Now, how do you educate yourself? How do you prove that you've educated yourself? Well, you join a trades union, of course. That's one way to do it. You join a political party. It could be any political party, but Labour was the dominant party at Ruskin, with the Communist Party coming in a close second. Yes, we had a Communist Party in those days. They really did control a lot of the unions. So that was the first thing. But joining a union was not enough. You had to show that you had been active in the union. What positions had you held in the union? Who could vouch for you from your union? So straight away you're separating the wheat from the chaff. Secondly, you had to show that as part of this self-education process, you had attended courses at, say, the WEA or the extramural department at your university, and you had to list those courses. And it helped if you gave the name of a tutor at the university who would vouch for you. This was a difficult process. Finally, you were given a list of essay topics, about a dozen. I remember one on my list. It said, "History is not what happened. History is what historians think happened. Discuss." Now, if you think about it, that's quite a serious university level examination question. or essay question. And the others were all the same. There was nothing made easy for you. I don't remember which essay I wrote, it's far too many years ago now. But on the basis of submitting all this information, including the essay, to the college, I was invited to attend an interview. And my God, they made me sweat because it wasn't one man who was interviewing me, it was five. And as I finished answering a question, another question hit me. The aim was to see if I sweated easily, if I broke under pressure. Obviously, I didn't, because they accepted me. 2 years later, I was coming to the end of my time at Ruskin, and I remember going to University College Durham for an interview. I quite fancied the idea of living in a medieval castle. I also went for 2 interviews at the University of Manchester, and all 3 interviews led to my being offered a place there and then. The only requirement was I finished the Ruskin diploma, which I did. I took one of the Manchester places, by the way, but be that as it may. Nevertheless, I don't regret that. So, what's the problem? Here we've got extramural departments, we've got Ruskin College, Oxford, Plater College, Oxford. All of the, if you get accepted to one of those colleges, your grant is paid by central government, so you've still got 4 fat years of local authority grant waiting for you at the end. Oh, it was wonderful. It really was, until it all went to shit. And that's something I'll look at in the 3rd and final part of my little talk. You think on, folks. Speak soon.